Hello. I come to you today in my second campaign speech, now missing both my top and bottom teeth. And as you may recall, in part one of my campaign, I had only my bottom teeth, but I had a very important message. And now I just so happen to be missing my bottom, and now I have neither top nor bottom, and another urgent message. So, pardon my gums. That's what I look like. And those 16 spikes stabbing me in the gums. And we can thank Alan Stan for the Ponzi teamer for the delay in my teeth. But we'll get to that at a later date. Anyways, my name's Eliot Bernstein, and I'm running for the Wholly Independent People's Party, a party which I intend to create to represent the 99%ers of Americans who feel disenfranchised with the other old school politics, the Republican, Democrat, Independent, these bought systems that have corrupted. So anyways, the People Party, Wholly Independent, we're going to get to that whole thing in a minute. I'm running for the Wholly Independent People's Party in the 2012 election, and today, in part two of my campaign rhetoric here, I'll discuss the platform I will run on. And rather, that's the platform that will be run by you, the people, not by me, your president, if I were elected. I'll just be administrator, basically, of that. And we'll get to that. That's the body of my campaign speech, is the People's Party and the Divine Constitution, a new online living constitution. We'll talk about at length today. I'll discuss today also how the People's Party will change America back to its core principles, make us once again the greatest nation on the planet. And perhaps, if doable over time, we can spread the love of the United States, and we can again be the impetus to creating the greatest planet of one people for one planet that respects and protects our one set of shared resources globally, and where we all have a common purpose, preparing a bright future for the people of the world, the next generation, and their offspring even. And this will be a system of laws that respects God's greatest piece of art, life itself. And it'll shape the laws of the world we live together in again, with a higher common purpose, where we're all working together, one planet, one people. And I think you're going to love the idea. I think it replaces these old school politics in a minute. It gets rid of a lot of problems that are plaguing us today, and it gives us an opportunity to all work together interactively to make change. So in part one of my campaign speech, up at my YouTube or website, Iviewit.tv, that's IVIEWIT.tv, or go to YouTube, type in Iviewit, go to my channel, you'll find my first presidential speech where I'm missing some teeth. Anyways, now I'm missing a lot of teeth. But in part one of my campaign, I discussed tearing down the wall of corruption, and not just the wall on Wall Street of corruption, but inside the corrupted mess called our government, which right now is more aptly called Crime Inc. And so I urged in that first speech for RICO trials for all the economic and war criminals in the United States, with the goal of recovering all stolen or ill-gotten monies, which have been estimated to be about $14 trillion to $50 trillion. And we should RICO and try those responsible for the crimes, convict them, recover all the stolen loot, all that trillions of dollars, and this will lead to a rebirth of the nation, because a lot of the corrupted officials will be in prison. And the rebirth, as you can see from Wall Street spreading and globally spreading, is coming. But what's going to replace our corrupted government or governments? And Wall Street, Greed Street's money kind of policy and work policies that are destroying our world. What will evolve from the wreckage of our corrupted system? Will it be this New World disorder, this disorder that's steeped in delusions of grandeur and further steeped in war crimes, economic crimes, treason, even eugenics is on their plate? Or will it be a New World system by the people for the people, not for this few so-called elitists who dictate the policy, who are really the greatest stain on this society because they really have usually inherited their elitism and haven't earned it, and so they produce nothing of value, and they are like a parasitic, brain infestation to the whole of the people. And so, but, you know, we're not going to try to waste them away, just the guilty ones, get the money back they stole, put it back into all those pensioners and union people's pockets and healthcare funded, because $50 trillion of recovered loot puts this country back in black overnight, and you can, and homes would be unforeclosed and everything else, and a few rich guys would be in jail. And not just rich people we're after in changing, we're in changing the corruption. So rich people who earn their money, God bless them, and may they enjoy the fruits of their labor and their benefits to society. And to those who stole it or, you know, inherited stolen money, that's all would go. And, you know, those companies involved in crimes, prosecuted in crimes, would lose all of their assets, etc. But we'll get into that. With Wall Street right now on fire, basically, and protests now filling the streets of cities around the country, which all should all move to the Department of Justice, by the way, and ask Holder and Obama to either arrest all these people that we know did criminal activity, or we're going to, you know, arrest them for aiding and abetting. And that's about what they've been doing up to this point. And now they want to tax them for a little bitty amount of money and tax the rich. And even the rich now want to tax themselves now that they're marching on Murdoch's house, now that they're marching on the houses. Now they want to pay a little tax. Well, no, I'm for recover the whole damn booty, the whole $50 trillion. And if your companies were involved in market rigging, etc., we can expect to seize your assets under the laws of the United States for treason and economic war crimes and a lot of Title 18 violations. You know, from antitrust Walmart, etc., and the end of American businesses to all of these scams. Okay, but with Wall Street basically imploding, the people ask, what's the message of the revolution? What is the focus? And will these 99% of the people give up or sell out to the 1%ers for some money? Or is this truly a revolution that'll make the 60s revolution look like it was on steroids? Because we have the internet, and we have an opportunity here to make a change from this rubble. And so let me continue on in my presidential platform, which will address all of these issues and how to return the country to the people. Again, making our country one of law and order, a leader of the New World system, a system run and operated by the people, for the people. Now assume that as I stated in my first speech, that the criminals who committed the war crimes, economic crimes, treason, torture, etc., were all tried and all the money stolen off with from the crimes were returned to the people from seizure of all assets of the convicted. So, assuming that this phase of my presidency started on day one, then the next phase of my presidency, which would start on day two, is the future, and the future for our children, and the future for all the people of not only the People's Party, but of this great nation, and perhaps one day we'll spread the love, as I said, around the earth. this idea will become contagious, I believe. And basically, let's look at the future, and let's look at it from a geeky standpoint, since it's got a lot to do with that, which we'll go into here. But basically imagine that what we're going to do to the current United States system is reboot it. And those running the system are going to be formatted or erased. And they're not going to have further control in the evolving system, especially since they're the ones that broken the constitutional republic we had, and most of them will likely be in jail for the crimes they've committed under the government. But it's a reboot, forget all that. Let's now come up with a new system to operate under, a new operating system, so to speak. So, how then would we the people, not me as your decider or anyone else as your decider, we rebuild the country together as one, starting from the Constitution up? All the voters, everybody who wants to participate, whether you have a computer, whether you want to write your stuff in, however you want to contribute, we'll take it and we'll make it part of this online, what we now are going to call the divine constitution of the People's Party. The People's Party, we're going to get into an explanation a little bit further in this as to what that represents. So, how can we fix our system? Forge a system, again, that's by the people, for the people. Well, if I were your president, here's what I would propose for the people to vote on for their future, and determine if it were a good plan to start for the country right now, and then vote on it together to either find a better plan or modify this plan to accomplish an agreed upon future direction for the party and our platform. And from Lincoln we can start ours, and we'll take the following bit of wisdom from Lincoln, who said, let me just see, who said, "We here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." And those were his closing words in the Gettysburg Address. You wish you were there. And it was recorded in a Hague copy of the speech stored at the Library of Congress. It's one of 5 written versions of that speech. That's where I've grabbed it from. Okay. And, now we're going to get in really to the beginnings and how to begin the divine constitution for the People's Party, now that we've thrown all of the old party stuff in the garbage. Where do we rebuild so that we come up pure, less corrupt? And that'll be part 2 of my campaign to speech. And thank you for listening. I'll be right back after this non-commercial break, but a computer break. Now, how are we the people going to begin this divine constitution? And that'll be the second part of my speech today. And the concept of an online constitution came many years ago to me in a dream while I was in a coma. And I had just hit a car carrier and had a bunch of Cadillacs fall on my head, and had a lot of sleepy time in the spinal unit. And that's how this began. But we're not going to get too deep into that part today. For now, it's important to note that it's a concept that started in this dream. And it's a concept that I've been working on since waking from that coma. And up till now, I've coined it a thought journal, a massive think tank of humanity, you could say, a brain trust of sorts, working on the common problems facing the people. Now, the thought journal was originally created to solve environmental type problems, that could extinct the species of the earth. And my concern, and sorry for the list because of the lack of the teeth, but my concern at the time that I thought of the thought journal was mainly for the future of our children and the future of all species and resources that we share Earth with together as one people, one planet. So the thought journal concept I tried once upon a time. I gave up my day job, gave up my life, and I tried to do a thought journal using fax machines and scanners, and this is way back before the internet and before hard drives had any gigabytes yet. Yet the concept was the same, and the technology, though, on the other hand, was far behind the concept. So in the first scenario of the thought journal, it was an environmental protection tool, bot of sorts, for people to come together, fax their thoughts in on how to solve ozone destruction or whatever, and we identify a problem monthly that would affect the future of the children, and whomever had a thought could fax it in whatever form, handwritten, type, whatever, you know, we're going to take your thought, or you could send snail mail, any kind of document to help the effort, and we were going to put that online for people to start to look at and make a book out of it. It wasn't online, because there was no online. It was in book form, and you could get a copy of the book for a penny, times and place, and which was a buck or two, of all the people's thoughts on those particular problems. And at the time, I named it the Institute for Critical Thought, and really, I shit you not, as most politicians will. I tried this with fax machines and 20 megabyte hard drives, and it was just impossible. And you can go to my website, Iviewit.tv, that's IVIEWIT.tv, and look at the inventor page under my name, Eliot Bernstein, and you'll get a primer on the thought journal concept when it was born, and some of my other thinkings as to, how this new online divine constitution we're going to talk about here was born. And so, okay, I failed the first time due to, let's call them technical difficulties. And just, there was no way to store millions of faxes on small hard drives, or in any way bring the people's thoughts together to interact upon one another to solve problems, when modems barely connected without hours and hours of work. So, at the time I shelved the idea, I picked up a day job again, moving rock and roll bands with the company that did that, some sales, and I was very depressed, though, because as the future of the children to me looked grim if the kids didn't have this thought journal to work to fix problems their parents seem to be creating by the minute environmentally, and and growth of the population, etc. But the problems always appeared to me steeped in greed. That nobody was accounting for the resources of Mother Earth, and we were just recklessly using them, not thinking what if we need this resource later, and how do we preserve, and it was all about profit, and we'll get into those whole things in a minute too. But always the problems were in greed. There was no future purpose there, that the people are raping basically the land and the earth, and now each other in large part for killing wars, etc. But all this was a greedy purpose, individual needs versus the whole. So not only are children's parents creating these problems, but also at the same time they're ignoring them and hoping they'll not have to suffer personally from the effects of their wanton greed, and caring not about the future of those who will inherit their messes, their children. And all I can say is despicable parents. I thought if their own children killed these greedy, selfish parents to protect their future, it would serve the parents right. I thought of Zeus and how things changed when he killed his father. The thought journal, in its original structure, was determined to tackle the environmental problems that could extinct the children and all species in a nanosecond. So pick any of the thousands of problems we're creating for our children. For example, global warming, cooling, ozone holes, pollution, decimated forests, decimated species, decimated rainforests, poisoned drinking waters, wars of aggression with, all kinds of machines capable of taking out our species. And with just about every one of these problems, we find that the real threat to our children, to the planet, and all of the creatures comes from man unkind, acting as a god, basically. Man unkind, replacing like the God laws, the easy ones, with the word and law of man, where man unkind's laws, in fact, usurp the Ten Commandments and stuff. And so, if you violate even those basic ones, what kind of laws do you have? So what's fundamentally wrong with our laws is that they lack any protection for the future, and therefore those people in charge of our laws, mostly lawmakers, or now you could call them lawbreakers, have lost all social value and concern. Instead, they're concerned only with their individual financial gain and power, not the future of your and my kids. And so, from these transgressions by our leaders, our our nation is crumbling at our feet, and it begets the question of basically how to transform our values back to the ones that value the human spirit instead. So prior to the thought journal, immediately after waking from this coma, from this car accident, I began having a recurring vision, and I was 19 at the time, and I'm like 45 plus here, a few years. I'm not going to reveal that in my presidential campaign either, because I truly believe that I'm older than dirt. But since that waking, I have dreamt nightly that the children and all species were burning, and that the end was coming soon for all of us. And it's an end caused directly by our parents' greed and lack of respect for our resources. And the only way I could see upon waking from the coma for the children to solve the problems caused by their parents and prevent this catastrophic end before it was too late for the children, and their extinction was their future, was for the children basically to kill their parents first, before their parents killed them. So, for example, parents ignoring things like ozone holes, waiting perhaps until it's too late to change and fix them. And because of that, as a result, their children begin burning. And their parents, having ignored the problem in greed, steeped in party, whatever, have failed to find solutions to the problems of ozone holes they created. And it results in their children dying, along, maybe perhaps, for many of our deeds, with all of life as we know it. Now, I know this killing the parent thing isn't going to look very good on my political resume as I run for president of the People's Party. But I proposed this to children, kids, when I was 19 forward, to a lot of people that I met, billionaires, or my clients, to everybody. I proposed that this seemed the only logical way for children to save themselves if their parents don't care for their future, don't prepare laws to protect their future, and don't hold that as the most important thing. When they put money and personal things above that, they fail in that most fundamental of life-loving creatures, which is to propagate a better future for their children. And just take a look at the shit we're about to leave them in America here, and you'll get the drift of what I mean, how greed has destroyed a beautiful thing. But again, here today to fix all that for us and propose a solution that will take us into a new world system that will drive us into the coolest places I think we'll ever see. Certainly better than going into the dark ages with the New World Order. But when the dream of a thought journal came, it appears, when I first had that dream, it appeared that having the thought journal would be an alternative to parent killing. And I was happy about that because the message of killing your parents is gloomy and dark. And while it might sound humorous, it does make sense to us that if parents are going to kill their kids to save themselves and their future, to kill this group of parents and start afresh. So when the thought journal came to me years later in a separate room, where voices, let's call them, in my head, and you're going to love to have a presidential candidate that has voices in his head, but when the dream of the thought journal came, it appears as an alternative at the time to me to parent killing for children. Yet truthfully, I'll be honest here, if I fail to bring the thought journal here in its new birth, the online divine constitution, if I fail to bring that to the people of the world now, then I fear that parent killing will be my advice forward to the children to save themselves. And, that would mean that trying to change these parents now to care about the future of the children and not their forces and other material possessions appears useless for the most part. Parents, therefore, must be eliminated or minimized from building this new future steeped in their greed. To fulfill their, we want to minimize them and keep them from controlling this new system for self-gain. And we'll see that the divine constitution, in fact, will be able to help solve the problem and be part of the solution. And part of that solution is actually going to be to no longer exclude children from our political processes that design their futures, and that without, them in account, may very well neglect it as we have now. And we become a worthless society because of that. And it's very sad for the people who have created that system. So the thought journal appears to me to be the only alternative to parent genocide, and is the concept that led me to discover some of the coolest technologies in the digital world. And I was working day and night endlessly to make the thought journal come to life, fearing that the end for the children would be tomorrow from these dreams, from this coma, etc. So the thought journal had to come to life. But yet, because of technical difficulties, it lied dead on the shelf for a few years. And then the internet was born. And I truly saw a way we could finally communicate modem to modem in a click of a button. And now the hard drives increased exponentially, and now we could share our text thoughts on the web. And that was the basic idea of a thought journal, was to share these ideas via fax. So now the web could actually do that, store it, and we should really be using the web's energy for all of us to be in a mind meld working on problems. And that's kind of what the divine constitution is going to turn into. But, right there I grabbed the thought journal off the shelf again, and I saw the internet as a way we could start the process and begin to use our minds together in a mind meld of problem solving. So then I really wanted to have video and imaging as part of that equation, and video conferencing, so that we could bring all the kids together and share, videos and images of rainforests being destroyed and zoom in on them real cool. So one of my inventions solved for pixelation, changing the digital imaging world so you could zoom in and out on anything from a microscope to a satellite image and never pixelate. So this zoom that's almost unlimited and now is being turned out into space to look deep into space, and that's where we're getting these rich images of space where we can see deep into the future, or into the past, excuse my reference there. But anyways, I grabbed the thought journal. I figured, here's the time with the internet. But when I went to use the video and the imaging, I, like most users, were stunned that the imaging was terrible. It's these tiny little postage stamp images. If you tried to zoom on anything, it pixelated right away, so it was mostly garbage. And then on the video side, it turned into a bunch of images with audio that kind of matched up. But, if you had ever seen television, you would have never watched this thing. And anyways, the problems when the internet was born was that, these things were useless, imaging, video, and because of the bandwidth, and therefore the internet was doomed, it appeared, to be a text-based medium with banner ads and small, grainy video and images. I mean, you could use rich imaging, but it would take hours to download these giant images, and it wasn't functionally ready for any kind of multimedia. Cartoonish graphics, that kind of thing would have been prevalent for years to come. So I knew that the key to bringing the children together was to bring them together face to face the problems confronting them, and be able to view the problems clearly via either video or images, and work side by side on those things together in video conference. So this would be able to bring diverse people of the world together in a techno melting pot, so to speak, that could divide the prejudice of people and unify them, and unify the human spirit again, and put us back as, one people, one planet, one resource, working together, not divided by these, old school dictatorial ways that divide and conquer. Here we've actually got unite and conquer, and unite and conquer anyone who's trying to divide and conquer. So, however, in order to achieve these lofty goals, the internet would have to have all those things to make a true thought journal, and really bring the kids together, and one that worked on low bandwidth. But all these things were deemed at the time impossible by all of the leading engineers of the world. They, in fact, termed it the search for the Holy Grail, and with that, I began my search for the impossible, for the Holy Grail, as it was imperative to the future, as I saw it, that we have those tools so that we could bring the kids together, so that the internet could be used as this mind meld, not for streaming videos. And a lot of applications that my technologies apply to, like streaming videos. Without them, you wouldn't have video on the internet. And so, the reason for them wasn't for people to make money off streaming movies, etc., or people to do dumb, video clips. All those were fine, or all the other stuff, bandwidth and CPU processing time is being wasted on, could really be used, in my mind at that time, if we had these tools, to, really bring us together as a united mind, create this new mind thing, and we'll get into that a little bit more in this. Needless to say, at the same time, at that moment in history, Bill Gates, seeing that video and video conference were terrible, actually gave Microsoft Media the venture he had started to Robert Glazer, saying it was crap and would never work. And Glazer started Real Player Video with them, believing that people still had uses, albeit very minimal uses, for small, grainy, out-of-sync video, audio through the web. And there were, some certain applications that would tolerate that degradation in the art just to get it through the internet, but very little. So Gates gave it to him, and after my inventions, of course, Gates re-established Media Player and copied my patents into his Media Player, like Glazer then did. Well, Glazer actually did it first, through a guy, Hassan Miyadzin, who was the first guy, when he saw my inventions, to call them the Holy Grail and alert the world that the solution to the Internet's problems had been found. And there were several inventions that changed everything to do with digital and digital imaging and video, and we'll get to that a little bit later. The technologies that me and several other inventors discovered back in 1988, both the main technologies, the imaging and video, emanated from dreams, far after the coma by years, with voices inside my head giving me the recipes for the inventions, drawing out the schematics. And, I woke my wife up in the middle of the dream and said, oh my God, I just heard from these like angel type things, the solutions, and boom, those were the solutions that were found in 2 profound dreams that changed your world. But anyways, the technologies have transformed the internet, obviously, the digital imaging and video worlds, as I said. They've transformed medical imaging devices, cameras, televisions, telescopes, microscopes, satellites, chips, you name it. If it's digital, it had a profound effect on it. And so keep in mind here that the Thought Journal came in a vision similar to this, in a similar dream, again, with conversation with angels, who these angels carried orders from God for me, it appeared, to do this Thought Journal, even though it was at a time that was, completely undoable. But, whatever you call God, higher power to me, whatever you want to call it to you, it was a calling to me from this higher power to make the Thought Journal a place where children could unite as one against their parents' deeds and damages to the planet, and change the world through solutions and offsetting their parents' damages until the parents died off with their greedy ways. Naturally, they didn't have to kill them because they found solutions through a Thought Journal. That's how this all came to be here. And these are the very same voices that many years later, after I had once failed to give birth to the Thought Journal, these very same voices came to me and now outline the Holy Grail inventions that would make possible the Thought Journal and transform the Internet to a more interactive entity, one that I think can be embraced wholly through the People's Party and the online constitution that will back it. These digital imaging and video inventions created from those divine dreams then wholly changed the world. So if I change the world once, I'm certain I can do it again, and I think it's imperative, and I see it, the old power structures crumbling and the walls and all that, but, I presume right now, modestly even, that no other inventions this decade have changed the world this profoundly. And, it's just one last example. They allow for video conferencing over the web. Cell phone conferencing would be impossible without them. You'd lose 75% of your channels on your digital cable without them. All of the computer gaming graphics and simulators would go back to Pong-looking things. And so that, seeing all that and seeing how much it's affected our world already, the technologies, at least to me, truly appear God's gifts to help children save the world from this catastrophic vision I have, which would be caused by the greed of mankind, which has consumed us. And so this provided the answer. And that's why I think this message is so important. I bring it to you without my teeth today. And I hope you can love me with the metal spikes again. I can't even bite down, these spikes go right through my teeth. So I just wanted to remind you of how much fame I'm bringing the message. But anyway, the digital imaging and video scaling formulas, therefore, were intended actually not to be used for all those other things, but to be the backbone technologies of the thought germ. And yet a funny thing happened on the way to the U.S. Patent Office. And by the way, at the time that this next part was discovered, there were great engineers from top studios, Sony and Warner Brothers, etc., all meeting together for Psycho Sushi on Mondays to discuss how to bring the thought journal to life and make it interactive and make it human and make it solve problems that were affecting our planet. And so anyways, a funny thing really did happen on the way to the patent office, and I'll take a side note here to fill you in. Evil men, I had these holy grail inventions, and these evil men came. And they came to me disguised as my trusted lawyers and patent attorneys and accountants. And they then attempted to steal and covet the holy grail inventions. They even called them the holy grail inventions. And they tried to steal them from God for their own greedy desires to make money streaming videos and starting up all kinds of hard drive companies and, industries that were started because of the need to, embrace my technologies, which would be like the streaming hosting companies and hard drive manufacturers, chip manufacturers, cameras, telescopes, everything was transformed at this moment. These, when you get your hands around the technologies, you'll understand what I mean. But evil came, and now these evil men, the same very evil men who stole the Holy Grail invention, then transformed these gifts from God to help your children. They diverted them from God's concepts that I was supposed to use them for into tools of the devil, basically, and used for personal gain. And then when these very attorneys and accountants, etc., were caught stealing the patents by what appears divine forces, then to stave off prosecution, they worked to pull a coup d'etat on the United States government and, avoid prosecution for the crimes, because they were busted. The law firms Proskauer Rose and Foley and Lardner were caught frauding the patent office, and even one attorney, Ray Joa, put 90 of my patents in his name, and so began their coup on the government. They were very powerful law firms with a lot of connections. In fact, the guy running Foley and Lardner at the time, Mike Rebbe, worked for the Bradley Foundation, and he basically was the RNC chief counsel at the time, and he would have lost all his personal assets in this RICO I filed and all that kind of stuff. And so he and the people at Proskauer, who were big in the Democratic Party, so you had the Republican law firm and the Democratic law firm come together in a common purpose to deflect investigation of them and lose their assets. And so they decided instead to pull a coup d'etat on the United States government. And they therefore then, Mike Rebbe, the biggest backer of George W. Bush, with the most to lose if Bush didn't get in, architected the Bush v. Gore election fraud. As soon as they saw that Bush could never win against Gore, they had to start frauding the election, and then they couldn't control it. Bush was going to lose it, and so they jimmy-rigged this Supreme Court decision where the Supreme Court threw the voters of the United States votes in the garbage and voted in George W. Bush as an illegally false president, thereby committing treason. And so all the members of the Supreme Court, in my view, are guilty of treason, and they should be tried for that treason, and we'll get into a little bit more of that. But once they illegally couped the White House once, and got a lot of backlash, and everybody lost faith in the Supreme Court going forward. I've lost faith in the government, meaning once the vote was brought in, the whole thing is a fraud, and everybody put into government going forward is a fraud or a criminal or part of the coup d'etat. So all the good people were pushed out, and new people were replaced, and so once they illegally couped the White House and the presidency through election fraud and treason and gained the presidency, they next went for the Department of Justice and courts and began to fire anyone who could bring them to justice. After gaining, they went for the Department of Justice after gaining the presidency. And, just recall the tortured legacy of Alberto Gonzales, who was terminated when he was found illegally politicizing the Department of Justice. Since the time of that election fraud, the coup has remained in power, despite what appears to you, the people, as a transference of power from Democratic to Republican parties. It's just a transfer of power in the coup. And that's because the coup has topped all the posts of current political parties, Republican, Democratic, Independent, and the Republican Tea Party. And therefore, the people are no longer represented by their falsely elected leaders. Their leaders are representing a coup which benefits a few 1% of the people who, decided to overthrow the United States government, the people they brought in to do that. A very small portion has seized our government. So now, even looked at the Supreme Court worried of having to do this again and commit treason again, and they're lucky they didn't get hung the first time. And that, I believe, one of the justices writes about in his dissent on that decision. But so that the supreme jesters at the Supreme Court could then dodge further election treason, they've now attempted to suppress the vote by ruling on this Citizens Ununited, or Citizens United is what it's called, but it ununites us, to allow their corporate partners in crime and apparent masters, these oligarchy companies, to buy the vote. So Citizens United allows, corporations to buy the vote. They count corporations as citizens. It's crazy. But, it's the only way the power of the 1% can keep in the power, because the real people's vote, the 99%, are against what they're doing, despite what the polls, which are all bullshit, don't buy into any polls or any news anymore, because the news is more like Krause. It's all scripted. They're bobbleheads, reading, whatever Zbigniew Brzezinski at the CFR writes them, and they're all a bunch of traitorous, sellout scum. They don't report any truth. They don't report Wall Street. They don't report all kinds of stories that are important. They keep your health filled with shit. Turn off the TV and all that scripted crap and free your brain. And get on the online constitution, which will be at the site www.thedivineconstitution.com. And as soon as it's up, get rid of that passive television brainwash and come put your brain to work and be a part of the future. So anyways, that Citizens United is about the most unpatriotic act since the unpatriotic Patriot Act, which was illegally voted into codified law by a group of people in power who were illegally put there through treason. And that's what the Supreme Court committed, and everybody who's been a part of government going forward has been pretty much a traitor, and many of the prior people in government sold out or were bought, and we'll get into how much money. But needless to say, once these coupsters, these law firms, Foley and Proskauer, stole off with the Holy Grail inventions, and now they were in the wrong hands, the hands of evil, evil rose to power. and great power, because the technologies have been valued in the trillions of dollars, changing massive amounts of industry and all kinds of hardware, software, everything. So the royalties from the inventions, which should be coming to me and thereby funding the Thought Journal and all these cool ideas, has gone into people who have used the technologies for the most evil of things, spying on you, all kinds of violations of you. But what really happened was basically what we've done is those technologies now, because they couped the government and I can't get justice for 10 years now, I can't get my case heard in a court of law, my patents even. My patents have been suspended by the Patent Office, pending investigations that are going on for like 7 years now, of the attorneys who are all registered with the patent bar and stole the patents. So anyways, the technologies are in the wrong hands. They should be in our hands, my hands, which would be, putting them, the monies, to a lot better uses and, starting new, fresh companies with good people, not a bunch of criminals. Anyway, industries were born from the technologies, and now evil men are in charge of those industries, and evils prospered from it. And further, from that point forward, our country was lost. It quickly slipped into an evil empire controlled by evil men, and all of them are criminals. Again, once the fox was in the hen house, and they had cooed the top post, the slaughter of the lamb began, and it hasn't stopped since. And the lamb being the American voters, you, and it's now spreading like a syphilis in your brain to the people all over the world, and evil spread throughout the government. And the criminals, they were all disguised as lawyers, so they could slip in and out of different government posts. So there they did. They disguised themselves as regulators and judges and prosecutors and politicians, and it opened a portal of corruption, because to block me at the FBI, to block me at the SEC, to block me at the various agencies, state, federal, international, I felt, they had to gain control of a lot of departments, including the Department of Justice. And, they were unregulated. They were regulating themselves. The criminals regulating themselves. So, once they got in and seized control, a massacre began. And it's been a bloodbath ever since. And all they had to do, since they were lawyers at the highest post, was fail to fulfill their oaths of office, their oaths to the people, and their oaths taken under God, and they did. And yeah, it's bad. They're bad people. Evil does exist, and needs smiting at times. But we'll get to that too. So there was this mass recruiting of criminals into government disguised as lawyers and politicians, and this seemed like an infallible plan. And for a decade now, it basically has been, but you can see the cracks in the wall. The wall is coming down. So there's this mass recruiting of criminals into government, and it's a perfect crime. They took over the heads of the government, and they brought in all their buddies from Skull and Bones and CFR and Bilderberger Burgers, and evil united around these inventions. And I really was concerned for the planet here. I've lost inventions personally here to the criminals, but once the floodgate of crimes began and the fox was in the hen house, it's led to hundreds of millions of victims worldwide, with crimes ranging from illegal war crimes, invading countries on lies, and then even knowing about the lies and not pulling the troops on the next morning, torture crimes, which, there'll never be justification. There's just no justice, so that's why those aren't being tried properly, because justice now needs to be tried, and those criminals that have taken over power of the Justice Department must be dealt with and tried. Until that time, this country will never return. Taxing the rich won't do it. You need trials of all of these people. That's how this country operates. Law and order, no one above the law, no matter who the hell you are. And so I don't care if your name's Wall Street, Wall, Bird, J.P. Morgan, Chase, Blob, Bank of America, Halliburton. If you participated in economic or war crimes, you need to be tried. That's this country. And, you know, at the end of some of these crimes like treason, well, we'll get to that, but I think they know what it is, and that's why they're holding on desperately for their lives and have literally gone delusionally mad. But, you know, they have now gathered millions of victims through these crimes. People out of their houses, lost their life savings, their home equity stolen, 30% losses on the houses from what has been stated as frauds and forged documents and foreclosures and all of this stuff, stealing the money from Medicaid and Medicare and trying to rob Social Security and breaking up unions to create slave labor and stealing all our companies to foreign lands to pimp out cheap labor while they say we're getting cheap products. Well, our country isn't doing good from any of this. We lost all our jobs for a few men to make a lot of bucks selling us out. These are sellout, traitors, un-American, Nazi, fry-loving, fascist, elitist pigs who deserve, for this treasonous attempt to take over our country, those who participated in it, to, you know, face the penalties of treason. Now, you know, one night when I was discussing with my wife Candace, who's the brains behind me, I cried to her and I asked her, how in the world could God let this happen to the Holy Grail technologies? We were right there. We had the technologies to do the thought journal. How could they be stolen and all this stuff? And now we don't have the funding we should have from everybody using our video conference and video teleconference and all of these technologies that we gave them. And, you know, how could God let this happen? And her answer, in her typical brilliance, was that it was destiny. That if a thought journal was to live, its purpose was to pave the way for the children. And maybe it was these bad people, these evil people who had stolen it, that were really a block to these children's futures. Maybe their ways were what really was stopping the children from having a bright future. And she said that the technology's purpose was to smite evil and give the children a future, free of evil men controlling the children. So the technologies and the theft of them, in her mind, were therefore serving a hidden purpose. So I said, what could the purpose be? And she responded that the technologies were given to me to attract evil men of the world, so that there would be an easier time for God to smite them, and he could laser identify them via like fingerprints, so to speak. So this concept was very unique of hers, and because as to block the inventors, to block us when we went to the courts, to block us when we went to the Department of Justice, to block us when we went to the SEC, new criminals had to be assembled to come in and to thwart my complaints and take over that department. And people had a sign on the bottom line of my complaints that they were dismissing them or what they were doing. And therefore we gained all the fingerprints of who was involved in the coup, who they were, where they had infiltrated, etc. And really you could just look at, since Bush v. Gore, that they're all coupsters that have come in. Anyways, you know, it took a lot of people, a lot of bad, evil people to come together to be a part of this and derail justice and derail the country. And, you know, like I said, they came from all walks. Skull and Bones, CFR, Bilderberg, all the bad came together. And now we're going to need an opposite force that's not just equal and opposite, but far greater will the good come to smite the evil. That's what I believe. and I think it's coming soon. I think they know that. But, you know, here we have all the criminals fingerprinting themselves along the way. And, you know, they needed more and more evil people than just blocking their complaints when they desired to overthrow the government in a coup d'etat. And as I, you know, stated, they had the reason, they had the motive, they had the trillions of dollars from my invention. So, you know, you can take it from me, that's the point the government was overtaken. I have filed a RICO, federal RICO and antitrust lawsuit, which has been related to a whistleblower, Christine Anderson's whistleblowing lawsuit. And it's before federal judge Sheriff Chinlin in the Second Circuit now. You can find out all the details about that, and a lot of the people who fingerprinted themselves are identified as defendants, including governors, judges, you name it. If they were involved in the coup, I'm, you know, accusing them all, including the court officers, etc. So anyways, you can go look all that stuff up at my website, www.iviewit.tv. And because I have a bad list today, that is www.iviewit.tv. It's got all the info out there, a bunch of evidence, etc. Now evil had concentrated itself around the technologies. Right now, all the evil is attracted to them, kind of like the Ark would attract people to come and try to open it, and then they burn up like Indiana Jones. Well, we haven't got to the burning up part yet, but I'm sure they're feeling a lot of heat right now. In fact, I heard the people have begun marching on their palaces, a modern storm the Bastille of sorts, showing up at their homes, their offices, their courts, at the government buildings, the DOJ, and exactly as I called for the people to do in my first presidential campaign speech months prior to the U.S. erupting in revolution and starting their revolution really in Wisconsin, my alumni state for the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Go Badgers, fuck 'em Bucky. You know, it's interesting how these holy grail technologies might actually have been, like my wife said, a trap by God to call evil to play. And if we're to prepare a better future for our children, smiting these assholes, these evil men, and destroying their power will be necessary to pave that brighter future. So the answer to smiting them would be to topple their coup, to try them, and under law, use like a RICO and recovery strategy, and as we the people are entitled by the Constitution, take back our country. Take it back by hook or crook. Avoid, you know, we have guaranteed Article 2 rights. Those pesky Article 2 rights are a killer for these guys. And now hopefully we'll avoid our Article 2 right to bear arms against our leaders when they corrupt. And we can do this peacefully, you know, although the Constitution gives you the right to do it violently, forming militias against their corrupted government. And, you know, they're forming against you, so you might as well smarten up about it 99% and get rid of them. But, you know, basically get rid of them all and begin with a clean slate of government officials, ones that are beholden to the constitutional republic's values to a T, or else face prosecution for violating the will of the people and charge them with treason. If we the people are successful in restoring law and order at this point by trial and punishment, the future generations should fear committing another treason against the people for another 1,000 years to come. At least from my wishful thinking, we wipe evil out for 1,000 years to come here. But, you know, these people have committed treason, and, you know, they all should be tried. RICO, let's take a moment there. Racketeering Corrupt Organizations Act is a particularly nefarious law in a wicked good way. And those found guilty of treason and economic crimes would have a sweeping loss of their assets and be removed from both political and societal influence, other than with, hanging out with other criminals in Club Fed. So, if the election of Bush v. Gore is investigated and found to be committed through treason, then every single anointed person in government forward, including those who committed to treason, would be fried and have to seek a re-election at best if they weren't in prison. Remove them all. The criminals' corporations, these law firms control certain corporations who now violate antitrust laws. They become too big to fail, the absolute definition of antitrust. Meaning if it's too big, break it up. And they should not be broken up now, they should be seized. And, just like Edgar Hoover seized George Bush's grandfather's Prescott Bush, Hoover seized his bank, Union Bank, for trading with the enemy, the Nazis, the Bushes and the Nazis. And so when Hoover told Prescott Bush, when he protested the seizure of his bank, quote, "You're a Nazi and you run a Nazi bank," end of quote, or, there were words to that effect. And with that, Hoover took over the bank and all of its assets. Where's Hoover now? Once sweeping these assets of the criminal organization and taking away their power, we'd instantly fire the boards and management of the corporations they've taken over and recapture all their illegal bonuses for bankrupting companies. Again, that doesn't make much sense. Bankrupting these guys who are supposed to be Ivy League, brilliant guys. That's just bought degrees these days, by the way, because the criminals have taken over the law schools, key ones, University of Chicago, where Obama comes from, Yale, where Bush comes from, Harvard, where a bunch of the goopsters, these elitists have come up with these plans to commit treason on the United States and foreign nations. And anyways, I can't understand how you bonus people for bankrupting companies and nations and then give them money to bail them out and bonus themselves while not doing anything they're supposed to. Those people I grab and hang, and then I hang them upside down after I hang them so I could empty their pockets out and give it back to the people they just ripped it off from. Not tax them, that's for sure. I hang first and then maybe tax them in a different way than they're anticipating. But all of them would be unseated, and basically going forward, a new patriotic group of citizens would fill their vacant posts and force the criminals to surrender all their ill-gotten assets, bonuses, etc. from their crimes. We get back every last cent by putting their accountants up their necks, and right as the news goes on, give them a chance to disclose where all the money went of the guy who's hanging next to them. Anyway, we'd return the loot to benefit the hard-working, blue-collar, middle-class people that it was stolen from. Stolen, stolen home equities, stolen pensions, trying to break up their unions, to divide them. Again, if the crimes that would be tried under the RICO would include war crimes, treason, sedition, torture, well, the punishment for those actually can be death. And I quote, in 1790, the Congress enacted that if any person owing allegiance to the United States of America shall levy war against them, or shall adhere to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort within the United States or elsewhere, and shall be thereof convicted on confession in open court, or on the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act of the treason, whereof he or she they shall stand indicted, such person or persons shall be adjudged guilty of treason against the United States, and shall suffer the death penalty. and that if any person or persons having knowledge of the commission of any of the treasons aforesaid shall conceal and not, as soon as may be, disclose and make known the same to the President of the United States, or some one of the judges thereof, or to the President or Governor of a particular state, or some one of the judges or justices thereof, such person or persons on conviction shall be adjudged guilty of misprision of treason. As always, uses are free at Iviewit.tv. So good riddance to those criminals that have been in our government. We're going forward now. We've got $15 to $50 trillion of recovered seized assets to fund up all our things, and we can inflate pensioners' pensions, pay higher wages. $50 trillion is a whole lot of money. We could bolster Social Security. We could fund Medicaid for people forever, probably. We could fund Medicare. We could take care of older people and be kind to people. We could stop starvation overnight with that amount of money, and they wouldn't get any fatter. That'd be about it. 1% of people wouldn't be rolling around in fat. A lot of people be eating decent meals that they earned. You know, I'm just saying, take it back from the people who committed crimes, who became elite by not giving anything but by taking everything. Those people need to be hung again. Anyways, who will suffer? These few criminals that are disguised as Congress people, two-faced lying bastards, lawyers, judges, corporate execs, all are corrupted. Grab them all, hang them all, try them all. I mean, try them all, then hang the guilty. I am for actually exterminating them from the planet, because they were planning on exterminating people through eugenics and starvation and economic terrorism, which truly is a form of warfare and of eugenics. And, you know, the stress of what they're doing to people by stealing their money and hoarding it, and then asking the people to give money to help them, and then not turning around and, you know, returning the favor. And they're unconscionable. They need to be put to sleep like a rabid dog. Anyways, the next part of this is really cool. This is where we forget all that past and we move into implementing the divine constitution. You don't like that. And I'll explain now how this new divine constitution, the divine constitution, can change the world and prepare us a new and exciting future for everyone. At a time, the world and the people yearn for a change, a spiritual change, an enlightened change, and a techno change. And I think this will solve all those problems. I hear the rumblings, the shouts of Mr. President, tear down this wall, and in the midst of the 99ers protesting and go 99ers across the nation to tear down these walls, all the old walls, and that's why they're marching all over the place. I come now not only with the cannons to blow down the walls, but I come with new stones, and stones to build a new future upon. I think you'll agree at the end of this that it'll be a new future that we couldn't imagine yesterday. Now, it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of help and a lot of donations to the Divine Constitution and the People's Party, but I think with 99% of the people behind the party, you'll see we can change this thing overnight. This is a game changer. I think it's a great platform for the new 99% movement to latch onto as their party. It's not influenced by any political means or anything else, but we'll get to all that. For now, the Divine Constitution basically will begin a new social reform. It's going to take some old concepts and mix it with new technologies, and some of the oldies that have been considered to start the People's Party and our platform in the Divine Constitution with would be, you know, the Ten Commandments, the Bill of Rights, and the Constitution. And those would be, say, three of the beginning building blocks for our new divine constitution. And I'm not saying that those are the only socio-religious political ideologies that can be included. Any of them can be combined into the mix, as the divine constitution is a living, growing entity, and it can account for all of those things, all of those old school God laws, new school people laws, and really, as long as we keep it under God, the people's laws will be great for the people. And, you know, so this is, with these new technology twists added, we the people will be creating a living, breathing constitution, a true by the people, for the people concept, really. And this new constitution will be controlled wholly by the people, always building upon the respect of God. That's why I threw something like the Ten Commandments in there, to cross-check man's laws don't violate God laws, which are good for everybody anyways, and that it doesn't violate the land, the oceans, or the beings, any of the beings, all life. You know, it'll be part of a primary purpose to try to, for the party, to try to bring about the best for society with our limited resources, etc., and how to best use them for everyone. So this is a constitution built on a mind meld of hundreds of millions of people, as I envision it. Even billions of minds will be involved in this at some point. So it's almost a mind to the nth degree. This all of our human energies directed at these issues and the legislations that are being proposed, and working to solve these problems and institute good laws for our world, where the majority vote wins, a true vote of the will of the people. Yet, unlike your old school votes in our current system of either a yes or no, your vote in the divine constitution will have special powers. Your vote as one of the People's Party will be different than if it were a vote for the pull the switch on the Republican, pull the switch on the Democrat. By the way, they're just pulling for the same type of candidate. They just, you know, all those parties are all the same. It's just what side of the mouth they're talking out of. But here, you're going to have special powers attached to your vote. And so, attached to your right to vote, and prior to any votes by the party or any legislation that get moved up, your ideas can have impact and change on the legislation while it's actively being designed, and you can put in an idea and have it voted on to be included in that legislation. And so it becomes part of the legislation, or part of what people will have in their final push to Congress for the People's Party. And it may, in fact, your very idea might have social change and become part of that legislation, if the people so will it, so vote on it in the People's Party. Your comments and suggestions for modifications of legislation will now, in fact, have billions of minds sharing your ideas, sharing that information, voting the ideas up or down, and letting the cream rise, providing future direction with all the best minds working together as one people, one planet, one resource. And now we all would have a divine purpose through this united consciousness. And a very powerful, powerful mind would be born. That mind will direct those laws in ways that will shape mankind in a much better future. So this quote, you know, this fusion of the mind, so to speak, in the divine constitution has future special properties, because as it develops, as we get more voters and the minds start working together on pieces of legislation, as it develops in the mass, it simultaneously develops in the singular, in the computer mind, let's call it. And in this respect, let's for now say a new entity will be born. An entity really unlike any other entity, a living supermind. A supermind that's constantly voting the will of the people, the true vote, not the represented by a few guys in Congress who misrepresent all their constituents, but an actual pulse of the vote. So this is a supermind that would be capable of taking our most complex global thoughts and reducing them to a finite point of the people's will, and then birthing new ideas from that, and new, industries, etc., and creating new ways for us to grow as a species together, all working together for each other. All people, one vote, period, but your vote has significantly far more impact because it's an actual part of the living body. And the new super brain of the people, this millions of minds combining in this new think tank of minds, will spawn new ideas. Those will be ideas to fix the planet, ideas for better laws, ideas to prepare the species for the future, and this will return us instantly to a species that works to propagate for the whole of the species. No special interest here whatsoever. Nobody can be bought, nobody can buy the vote. This really usurps the old school politics and replaces it with something far more technical and up to date. This is like we're driving in buggies with this political system that's so corrupted, cronies, bunch of criminals, no justice, a horrible, horrible system that's evolved out of what was a good system, a few hundred years ago before people started to slowly chip away at it. And so let us start with the fact that if our forefathers had had an internet that could reach almost all the people in the states, they would have put the Constitution online because it was a document by the people, for the people, and for the people to interact with directly, as they were creating the Constitution for the people. So it's by the people, for the people means you were supposed to have input into your Constitution that rules your life, not give it over to some congressperson and hope that he votes the right way for you, which he never does. He votes the way people are paying him and who bought his vote. And his vote is millions of people. That's where the skewing is coming. That's why it's 99% to 1 right now. The system has totally gone off balance. This restores that balance, this divine constitution. So what could be more by the people, for the people, than a document that people have direct input into, and thus determine the course of growth of the society that the participants live within? A document that dictates to our politicians what we the people want, not what they, our deciders, decide, with a handful of special interests determining what the people are going to get. That's all bullshit. A divine constitution would instead have it that each person, not corporations, would have one vote and can vote on any piece of legislation affecting the body politic and humanity, and propose legislation themselves. Why, you could even put up a platform and run for presidency and have the voters of the People's Party look at your agenda, make suggestions. Maybe those suggestions will get incorporated or spring new ideas. And once you get a platform that the people vote you in, hey, what better way? Of course, we're going to hold you accountable in this party under some pretty stringent rules. That of treason and usurping the vote of the people will be looked upon as treason. But we'll talk about that later. Right now it's fair to say that not everyone is going to vote on every piece of legislation proposed. While that is possible in this scenario, it's most likely not realistic or effective for everybody to be voting on every single thing that doesn't affect their lives, etc. But, on ones that affect everybody's life, maybe we will get 100% participation in the vote from people who have an active interest. This is where this is more a system where individuals can vote mainly across areas germane to their lives, or where their knowledge in one field may prove useful in benefiting developing legislation being worked on, and even in some instances you might be called as a voter of the People's Party by other people working in different cross sections of the population who need your knowledge in an unrelated area that you would have never seen, but because of that interaction among our minds, you're being brought into situations to decide if you want to help and aid and have ideas to benefit that legislation. Imagine millions and millions of minds now working together on these things versus a few hundred Congress idiots who mostly have bought Ivy League degrees that are meaningless, that most of them don't care about the will of the people, don't vote the voice of their constituents, or else you wouldn't have a 99 to 1% ratio of 99%ers. It just wouldn't have happened. The reason is that despite what those polls are telling you, despite what those news media agencies are brainwashing you with, it's all lies. The real vote is 99 to 1 right now. But because they're lying to you and manipulating the votes and manipulating the elections and manipulating the polls, you're just being brainwashed and accepting it. But the truth is, with this, we'll find out what 99%ers really feel, each one of them. We'll have an accurate poll that reflects exactly what the people are thinking, not some Karl Rove influence polls and Fox News created polls and polls on, that everybody's just creating to make their point, which are garbage. So this will end all that kind of nonsense from the old school. In the divine constitution, therefore, the divine constitution will vote the will of the people, basically. Not the majority of a small group of elected or often illegally anointed members of Congress and the three branches of government choosing for the people, but the will of the people choosing the direction. By implementing such a system under the new People's Party, the People's Party's voters can sign up immediately and begin to put pressure on old school Republican, Democratic, Independent, and Republican Tea Party parties. Meaning, once we get this thing up with enough members, the People's Party, it's going to carry a big club when we walk into Congress with 99% of 300 million people wanting one thing and 1% of the Republican and Democrats who are still, afflicted with old school politics trying to get their special interest through. We'll have 1% of the vote and 99 standing at the door saying, no way. And since this country still works on the will of the people, by returning it to the will of people, we can assure that the will is being done and not these special interests through bought off or paid off politicians who are corrupt. And goodbye. If the 99%ers adopt this new People's Party platform, where they can put up all of their ideas about tax the rich, about change the environment, about blah, 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 well, with each new registered People's Party voter, the other parties will decline and fall. And hopefully, if the 99ers adopt the new party and platform, the other parties will have 1% of the people in them and will have 1% of the voice of politics. And therefore, all of their ideas and wars of illegal aggression that are undeclared by Congress and misusing all of our funds for schools and hospitals and teachers and all these things would be gone in a second with the people's will. Meaning the people probably, 99%, don't want wars. And so it'd be gone overnight. And the people who want war, 1%, would have 1% say. And so they probably wouldn't get those ideas through without warring upon us, which is what they are doing now to get that through. Why it's so important, this comes to birth right here, and we raise 99% of the voters' consciousness to this party and really have the Tea Party where we overturn the system, not the Tea Party of Karl Rove and the Koch brothers, which is more like a cocaine snorting party of numbskulls with psychotic ideas. Anyways, this online constitution must have some basic rules. And, so let's go through some of what would be proposed by me to the online users that will be generated, the voters, as the basic rules to vote on first, and establish an agreed upon governance of our People's Party and the operation of the online journal. So my ideas aren't written in stone, they're open to the people for suggestions. May those ideas flourish into final legislation and rules for our party that are voted on by the party members. That's, and then each year we can re-vote with all the new members, all of these things. And you'll see that the active will of the people being able to tap that pulse will allow us to always check the pulse of the people to make sure our ideas, even after we implement them, are working correctly. Because a lot of times you start with the best intentions and you end up on the road to hell. And you end up there because the cronyism won't change it. You get stuck in the oil industry because they don't want to lose their grip on power. That'll all change. It'll be, per minute basically, per second if you want it to be. However you rig the computers to be representing the people will be how the people will be represented on each legislation. You could have weekly votes on some things. So, we'll figure that out. This is part of what I'm talking about here. This is part of the rules, or, I don't want to put it as rules, but the user-voted rules. So as founder of the party and perhaps founder of the Divine Constitution and possibly president, but even if I was the president of our party, I would only have one vote like everybody else. So my job would kind of be like yours, to propose new ideas and have them voted on to see if enough votes can be generated to move legislation to a bill and so on. As president, of our party, if I were elected president, I would turn over control of the party to the will of the party. And, it wouldn't be my way or the highway or George Bush's way to wars, based on stupidity. None of that, for oil profit, etc. So the first order of business would, of course, be setting up the online constitution in an operational model form. This will require the help of both geeks and donors. I estimate the cost to get the machines up and running in a final version available to the public on a full public scale model would cost about $100 million to initiate the actual party, the People's Party, get it, funded and get its membership growing, and to put up the actual online constitution with hardware, servers, etc., capable of handling the voting. And there will also be some other very cool, unique technologies that would be applied to this that require massive computing power, etc. And so, estimating a beginning cost of $100 million to fix our country and put our Constitution back in check is nothing to me. The problem is, again, in this party, all donations will remain anonymous, and no influence will be gained from the donations other than the reward of investing in the future of our children of all the species. And, in a greedy world, I might get nobody to help. But, I'm banking on people are a lot better than what the current establishment would like you to think of your neighbor. As for initially putting up a test model, I'm seeking geeks to volunteer their geekiness first in charitable contributions of time, goods, and energies to make the fundable test model for public approval and funding. To get the party going, I'm going to need some help from people who care and want to make this thing happen and put up a model that works, that we could then get funding for and show people what this is capable of. And that would have to be done really quick, and it would really give all the 99ers a place to vent and get legislations around their ideas and ignore these other parties till they're useless, till they're just 1% of nothing, what they are. Members can start signing up soon at www.thedivineconstitution.com, and there shall be only one website representing the People's Party, and until a new one is voted into existence, that one shall be it for now, as it's central right now to the party's efforts that there must be a singular focal point at this point. So in order to get running, I've proposed a set of rules that voters can either vote in or out and replace with new and improved voted-in rules later. This is the beauty of the divine Constitution, its ability for the People's Party to truly be representative of the people's will in every way, the pulse of the people in all facets of the party. Again, nobody's in charge, all are equal in consensus rules here at the People's Party. Now we're going to talk about the proposed, and this is my final part of my campaign speech too. We're going to talk about the proposed initial rules of the divine Constitution and the People's Party. And again, these are open to suggestions and vote. The first rule would go something like there's 3 votes to be tallied on every piece of legislation proposed by the People's Party. The yea vote, the nay vote, and the unvoted. The 3 votes shall at all times equal the number of voters enrolled at the time of voting. 2, candidates who want to become congresspeople and represent the People's Party, or even president representing the People's Party, will also be able to post their online platforms for change and garner votes for their ideas from the people with comments, etc. And they may rise in the People's Party through direct voting by all members, no special interest corruption of politicians. You either gain the majority or you don't, not you're bought off. Remember, in today's system, several hundred congresspeople vote on legislation that people never see or even approve of, and it affects millions of lives. Yet in this new system of politics, the politicians instead are controlled directly by the voters, where going against the voters would result in being fired and perhaps tried for treason for voting against the people who put you in there to vote the way they wanted. So we would again have this system run by the people, for the people, not run by politicians for their special interest buddies. So that's rule 2. Rule 3 would be like the candidates and elected officials of the People's Party would take oath to obey the voters only, their function becoming more guiding and deciding, a bit of officiating for the people. So, and then that rule 4 would be, at first, any provable U.S. citizen age 13 and up, any sex, color, creed, kind, religious bloc can vote. And, the reason 13-year-olds are included is because from the mouth of babes, lest we miss some of the most insightful and fresh and creative youth voices, which have been suppressed now for years, and they've been denied this input into their futures, and that might be perhaps why we went astray and failed to build a future for them. So this would be an important piece of legislation we would get passed right away by the People's Party, is to get 13-year-olds up into the voting process in some capacity. And then, as your votes are anonymous and your name will not be revealed with your vote, your voice will, whether you're 13, black, green, yellow, Jewish, Protestant, whatever, your voice will have as much voice as any other voter. And, it won't be based on those things. It'll be based on our common work on the legislation from all areas of life affecting it, and respecting all the different people in all their different views. And believe me, these systems, these computer systems we'll be designing, will be able to handle all that. And you won't need to be part of a group based on, religious ideals, etc. You'll just be a person with a vote and a voice, whatever you believe. So that's that on Rule 4. Rule 5 is the voters remain anonymous. Comments and interactions, it's up to the user to decide if they want to be anonymous while they're working on legislation. But the votes would remain anonymous other than the assigned number you get for that vote. So that's Rule 5. Rule 6 would be something like monies to operate the party and fund candidates are anonymous, and therefore money can't influence more than a single vote. All contributions and expenses of the party are governed by the People's Party's voters and are allocated according to the vote for the appropriations with a majority rule on the fundings. 7. The 7th rule would be the 10 Commandments and other religious laws are the first line of law to be checked against when the People's Party approves legislation for the divine constitution. And therefore, we'd have God's law regulating humans under God's law. So humans would be regulating humans, but still be following those basic laws of God. And what, like we talked about, whatever God had laws. Whoever wants to input their God's laws into this, with enough votes, you're in. Human laws, which again will not be able to transcend the God-given laws in any ways, and that's why God's laws are first, so that the human laws don't transcend those basic fundamental rules of how that we should respect each other under God. And you remember that Lincoln said, this republic of ours should be under God, and the Constitution's written under God. And, I'm not saying what God and who's God's right and what that means, and neither should you. It just should be a higher being we all respect that brought us life and brought us into this beautiful world. And I'm sure he didn't bring it in, or she didn't bring it in, or it didn't bring it into us, into this world to destroy, pollute, rape animals, kill all the species, kill each other, war on each other. It's all. I don't think any God would have approved any of that. So since I haven't ever seen a God really promoting that and promoting more, get along, love your neighbor, love your brothers, those kind of things, it would be good if human laws were designed to respect those fundamental laws of God, and then we wouldn't stray outside of God. So that's that whole rule. The 8th rule is kind of from my kids' school, honor above all. And as this is work of humanity for humanity, to commit things like voter fraud here would be to commit crimes against the future of our children. So I can only see people without children maybe even doing that, but I mean even then to commit crimes against the future is horrible. It's not like these politicians. You'd be actually, committing crimes against the whole. And, so we're going to look at voter fraud and crimes like that against the People's Party as treason, and those things will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law by the People's Party, and we'll vote in what law that should be and what treason constitutes. As I read you before, it constitutes death. Number 9 rule would be something like make your vote count. Use your vote only on issues you have complete understanding of. A receipt of each vote will then be maintained, and all votes will be tallied online so as you can ensure that you can verify that your anonymous numbered voter account accurately is reflected in the tally. Whereas today, we don't see anything. You pull a button and you don't even know if your vote really went to what you pulled, or if anybody's even really counting. The Supreme Court's just deciding deciders for you. So your vote probably hasn't counted since that point anyways. And with Citizens United, you're owned by a corporation. That's who owns the body politic. And so you're either going to accept that as their subject and be a useless slave, or you're going to be an American, and you're going to basically embrace this. And then Rule 10 would be to embrace each other to find solutions that not only benefit the 51% of the voters necessary to carry forward proposals and candidates, but work together to try to get 100% of the voters on the same page by finding solutions for everyone's concerns wherever possible. And again, you'll have the super brain, the brain trust, working to help us and find solutions so that everybody's concerns, and if legislation is going to leave somebody unemployed, maybe there's a way to find employment from that, from asking users and finding out how, if we're going to change from dirty energy to clean energy, how are we going to switch all these people? And those answers, with millions of minds working on them, will be solved overnight. And most likely we will find consensus that everybody wants clean fuel, and if everybody can make money and still make a lot of money for the guys who like to make a lot of money, great. And we'll have a clean energy program, replace the old energy program, but not burn all the people who would be burned if we just transisted in a corporate structure of our political system today, where an industry is burned and people just get destroyed right there. Here, you have the ability to ask the people, and the people who are getting destroyed can put in their input, and the people who are destroying them can take that into account, and we can make the legislation work to try and make almost 100% happy. Of course, it's 51% majority of the will goes, but again, if we could get it to 100%, boy, we would be really the children of the sun. We would be God's creatures again, working together in harmony to save our planet, to save our people, to save all the species, to preserve resources, to promote growth of all. And I think by putting all these brains together, we will advance civilization at a faster rate than it's ever advanced in time. And it will be through and by the will of the people. And that's what I think the founders of the Constitution were trying to give us. They just didn't have the internet. They didn't have my technologies to bring people from diverse spots all over together. And remember, if we turn this into a global political system here that spreads, and everybody wants to be a user under it, and the whole world starts working together, why then we have actually conquered through uniting. And so united, we conquer. Divided, we fall. And that's pretty much the end of my presidential campaign speech today. That was a whole lot. I'm tired. So sign up today at www.thedivineconstitution.com and have your voice and your vote really count. Really. And my name's Eliot Ivan Bernstein, and I endorse this message wholeheartedly, as I was the only one involved in the creation of this message. No monkey script handler for me. No message teleprompts from any masters. Just plain old talk. Me to you, the people, my friends. God bless, Godspeed, may we get this up, and may the world change starting tomorrow. Thank you very much.